How's everybody doing today? Today I just wanted to do a little video that goes over if statements. Now, if you've taken CSE 121, which is a prerequisite to this class, you have seen if statements already. They were just in another programming language. You might have seen them in Python, you might have saw them in Visual Basic, but the idea is all the same. An if statement allows you to make a decision based on a condition. So even though the syntax is going to be a little different in C# than it might be in Visual Basic or in Python, you're doing the same thing. A couple things I just wanted to go over. If you have a condition, which is part of your if statement, chances are you're going to have a relational operator. Okay, we've got this sign for greater than, less than. Now, if you want to specify equal to, if you want to check that something is equal to, note you have to use two equal signs. Not equal to is specified by an exclamation point followed by an equal sign. And then we've got greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these are pretty much the relational operators that you might use in a condition. Now, in C#, the way the if statement is set up, you start with the keyword if, and then your condition has to have parentheses around it. And then you have an opening bracket to indicate the start of your if statement, a closing bracket to indicate the end of your if statement, and inside this you can have as many statements as you want. If the condition is true, it will execute all the statements inside the if statement. Some example, let's say we are trying to calculate rate based on level, and I'm just going to assume if my rate was 8, if I'm level 1, I get $8 an hour, level 2, I get $10 an hour, level 3, I get $12 an hour. So let's look at this series of if statements. So I've got the keyword if, notice it's small I, small f, parentheses for my condition, level equals 1. So this is asking the question, does level equal 1? I'm assuming I've got a variable for level and it has a value in it. Remember, you can't just say level 1 equals sign 1, because that means put the 1 into level. Remember, in programming, 1 equals sign is an assignment statement. It takes whatever value is on the right side and it puts it into the item on the left side. So if I want to check, hey, does level equal 1? Then I'm checking for equality. I need the two equal signs. So basically, if this statement is true, then rate is going to be assigned a value of 8. If this statement is not true, it just skips over it and it goes to the next statement. But really look closely at the syntax. You're going to have to remember the condition is in parentheses. I start with a opening bracket, I end with a closing bracket. I have to have a semicolon after my statement. If I've got more than one statement, I have to have a semicolon after each of these statements. Besides that, though, if you get the syntax down, it's pretty much like any other if statement you use. If the condition is true, it executes the statement. If not, it bounces right over it. The other thing you might run into when you're using if statements is you might have ranges. For example, the next thing I want to do is I want to calculate somebody's bonus, and it's based on how many years they've been with the company. Basically, if they've been with the company 0 through 5 years, they don't get a bonus. 6 through 10 years, they get a $5,000 bonus. 11 through 15 years, they get a $10,000 bonus. 16 through 20 years, they get a $15,000 bonus. And if they've been with the company over 20 years, they get a $20,000 bonus. So what we're going to have to do with an if statement like this, multiple if statements that require ranges, is we're going to have to use one of these operators. You probably remember from Visual Basic or Python, whichever one you took, we've got the AND keyword, we've got the OR keyword, and you've got a reverser called NOT. What we're going to be focusing on is the AND keyword. In C#, you represent AND with two of these symbols. You represent OR with two of these symbols, and you represent NOT with an exclamation point. Now remember, AND, both of the conditions have to be true for the overall expression to be true. With OR, only one of the conditions has to be true for the overall expression to be true, and not just it's a reverse, or it just reverses the condition. So if I were to create if statements to take care of this situation, this is what they're going to look like. So I've got my first one, if years less than or equal to 5, no bonus, bonus equals 0. Now here's my first multiple condition if statement. I say if years greater than 5, and, remember these two symbols represent an and, years less than 10, bonus equals 5,000. One thing that a lot of times people do is this. They'll make a mistake of not putting in the second part of the if. So what they'll have is if years greater than 5 and less than or equal to 10, that won't work, because in programming you have to be incredibly specific. So you need to say years greater than 5 and something else less than 10. It doesn't pre-assume, since you used years in the first condition, that you're also going to use years in the second part of the condition. So I'm going to put it back in here. Alright, to get this whole thing to work, I would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different if statements, as I have 5 different possible ranges. I've got my middle ones, years greater than 10 and less than 15, years greater than 15 and less than 20, and then my last one I go back to a single condition because it's just if years greater than 20, then my bonus is 20,000. If I take a look at these in programs, the next thing I'm going to do is bring up a couple programs. The first one is going to be representative of this series, and the next one is going to be representative of the bonus series. Alright, now both of these programs are available to you in the download. I'm going to take a look at the whole program. Here I set up a variable for hours, for level, for rate, and for pay. And the next thing I have to do is I have to move the level and hours data from my text boxes to my variables. Now, since level, I set it up as an integer, notice here I used an int.parse. Since hours is double, I used a double.parse. So I take both the values from the text boxes, put it into my variables, and now I get to my part where I'm using my if statements. Now these if statements should be pretty much exactly the same as the one in the lecture notes. If level equal 1, remember I'm checking for equality, rate is 8, and so on. So what's going to happen is it's going to go through this series of if statements, assuming my level is either 1, 2, or 3, it'll pick one of them, assign a rate, and then it just takes that rate, multiplies it by hours, puts it into my variable called pay, and then the last thing it does is uses a toString, currency 2 decimal, so it can put the value of pay into my text box. If I go ahead and run this program, let's say my hours are 40, and I say my level is 1, and I hit calculate pay, it says, oh, that's $3.20 because it's $8 an hour. If I change it to 2, recalculate, remember 2 is $10 an hour, so that's 10 times 4,400. And if I go to level 3, that's $12 an hour, and I get $4.80. So it seems like it's working very nicely. I wanted to show you the next program, which deals with bonus. And again, it's pretty much taken the if statements we had in the lecture notes, but just applying them to a whole program. So here's this program. Again, I define my variables, then I initialize them. For this one, the only thing I had to get out of the text boxes was years. If I go to the design, it's just years is the only value I had to get. Then I use it to calculate the bonus. So I use a double.parse to get years out of the text box, put it into my variable, and I set up 5 different if statements. Okay, if years less than 5, bonus is 0. Greater than 5 years and less than 10, bonus is 5,000, and so on. After I get through with all those, I will have a value for bonus, and I just take that value, use a toString, currency 2 decimal, throw it into my text box. So again, if I run this program, I say, alright, what if I've been there 4 years? No bonus. 7 years, $5,000 bonus. 12 years, $10,000 bonus. 18 years, $15,000 bonus. 20 years, still at $15,000. Remember, I got to go over 21 years. 21, Boom, now I'm up to 20,000. So anyhow, hopefully this was helpful. You should remember if statements from whatever previous programming language you took, and the thing to remember, they're really doing the same thing as they did in Python or they did in Visual Basic. It's just different syntax, that's all. So hopefully that'll be easy to get used to. Anyhow, hopefully this video was helpful. We will see you next time.